Hi guys, welcome to our interview tonight. Tonight we're talking to Sandra, one of the Reconciliation Ambassadors. Hi Sandra.
Hi AJ, how are you?
Good, I'm glad you can enjoy it. Join us tonight.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, cool. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I've been working in the early childhood sector for probably way too many years that I would care to say, but probably for about 38 years. I originally started from my experience with a young daughter, putting her into childcare and finding out that I was a very fussy mum, ringing about 6 times a day. And it was a very traumatic experience for both myself and my daughter. So I found myself buying a childcare centre. And that in itself is probably an interview all on its own. But that's where I started, then realising that the skills that I had as a mother was not enough to look after other people's children. So I then, after a couple of years, undertook a teaching course and became a kindergarten teacher. And that's probably really, I think, where my journey began in understanding the depth of education for early childhood. And I have worn many hats: kindergarten teacher, director. I have taught in the TAFE system, various RTOs. I have been a a professional development facilitator. I have even taught in a special school. I've many hats. There's probably other hats. Oh yes, and currently now a educational leader. And I'll probably say, out of all of the roles that I've had, probably my most enjoyable would be the educational leader position, because I haven't got those responsibilities that a director has. And I can work with the educators. And one of the things that I really enjoy in working with the educators is embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. So that's why it's a real pleasure to be here tonight. So thank you.
So Sandra, what does Australia Day mean to you?
Okay, well, the Australia Day is quite controversial at the moment, but I would say for many it's a celebration to be part of a wonderful country, Australia. And for me, that's what it was. That's how I celebrated Australia Day for many years. As I was educated at a time when we were not given the truth. The truth wasn't told through the real history of colonisation and the impact that it had on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. But I have to say that even though there was no truth given, there was always just something. There was a gut feeling that I had that there was just something that just didn't settle well for me. So in answer to your question, I now don't feel comfortable celebrating a day that represents invasion and has caused trauma and continues to cause intergenerational trauma. I can't change the past, but I can advocate for the past's wrongdoings, and I can advocate for rights and change. And I think my journey through early childhood has given me a perspective of trying to understand what has happened. And that's meant education for me. So, that did start me on a journey of wanting to know what the truth was. And so where there used to be barbecues on Australia Day and inviting people around, I don't do that anymore.
Why do you think it's contentious for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people?
Well, because it's a day of invasion, isn't it? You know, it's certainly not a celebratory day for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. I mean, the world as they knew it, life as they knew it, became disrupted and taken away from them. There was carnage, you know, people died. They were trying to protect what they knew was their life and the way that they lived, and all of that was taken away from them. So how can they be happy about celebrating a day where they were taken away from their families, their loved ones died? They were fighting to keep, and they didn't even know that white man existed. So, you know, there's so much trauma, and the intergenerational trauma that still exists today. You've still got families that haven't been able to connect with family.
True.
And are still trying to locate their heritage. There's languages lost. And, you know, we think because somebody is Aboriginal that they have the answers to give to us. They don't, because they don't have the answers themselves. They're still seeking out and wanting to know about their culture and their customs. And they know innately inside of themselves that there's more, but they don't necessarily know what that more is. They know that connecting to country is really important, but they don't necessarily have the language or, you know, their family's language. And that's wrong. It's really, really wrong. And there's a disconnection. And I can't say that I understand it completely, but I can understand it to a certain point, because my father was from Germany. Now, he came out sometime after the war, but because he was from Germany, he didn't speak German. He wouldn't speak German. So therefore, he didn't teach us to speak German. But we ate German food. We had German traditions. You know, Christmas Eve was, we got our presents, and all the neighbours used to complain that Santa came to us before their children, and that wasn't right and that wasn't fair. And there were so many traditions of Germany that we celebrated. And then some years ago, I went to Germany, and I remember being on the plane, on the train going from Milan to Germany, and I could feel this, I'm going home. I can't explain the feeling, but there was this sense of I was going to somewhere that I knew. I got there, the food and everything was so familiar to me, but I felt displaced. Why? I could not speak the language.
Mm.
So I can't say that I know exactly, but I do know that we have something innately within us that if we are from a culture, that even if we were not connected to that completely, it's within us. And I love my father to pieces, and I still do, but I'm really upset that he didn't share his language with me, because language is just so important. Now, if I could have connected with people in Germany with language, I would have felt more complete. So for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to lose language, I feel for them.
And thank you for sharing your family story with us just then too. So, but it's great reflection. And I think that something that people need to really think about. But that goes on to my next question is, in what ways could early childhood educators educate other staff or kids about the true histories of First Nations people?
Well, I think that's a really great question. And I think it needs to start with educators taking on some responsibility to educate themselves. And I think they need to understand the real history, because I don't think that you can educate if you don't know yourselves. And there's a saying that I use that you don't know what you don't know, and that's okay. But you need to do something about what you don't know. And our framework expects us to educate children on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. So we don't have a choice. And I'm glad that it's in there, because I feel that it needs to be, particularly when, you know, I was not educated on the truth. So I think they can start with undertaking cultural safety training. And I think it's fantastic. Now there's no excuse. It's in child safe standards. So all educators need to undertake that cultural safety training. I also think another great place to start is the Little Red, Yellow, Black Book.
Yeah.
You know, that has a lot of history in it. And I don't think that you can really feel a sense of empathy and understanding unless you know the history, unless you can reflect and try and put yourself in that place, in that moment, or in those places, I should say, because it's not just about invasion. There's many moments in history, you know, let's face it, they weren't, you know, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people weren't even able to vote. So if we look through history and the timelines, I think that's really important. But it's not just about knowing it. I think it's about reflecting on it, discussing it, talking about it, and thinking about, well, what if that was us? Because I think if you don't try to put yourself in someone else's shoes, you're never really going to try to understand. I mean, you can't really understand, but you can try to get a sense of how would you feel.
Yeah.
I also, Jessica Steins has a great blog that educators can access. And that blog has a lot about Australia Day, and that we shouldn't be celebrating, we should be educating. There's also a good YouTube video, and that YouTube video is called As Aboriginal People Respond to Australia Day. So that's listening to Aboriginal people expressing how they feel about Australia Day. And I think it's really worthwhile watching that. And I actually recommend watching that at a staff meeting and sitting down and discussing how the staff at your centre are going to move forward about Australia Day after you've listened to Aboriginal people expressing how they feel about Australia Day. There's also another good video that I would recommend, and it's called Australia Day Date, or should the Australia Day date be changed? Behind the news. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got some notes here. Didn't want to forget anything.
And I would just add, I've seen the behind the news one, and it is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, no, it is. It's really, really good. With children, I think that we need to include resources to support inclusion and social justice.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really important that we've got social justice themes, and that we embed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives in in a contemporary aspect, because in my work, I've gone into a lot of services as an assessor and trainer, and I do see aspects of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, but a lot of it is representative of traditional in the past, not so much contemporary. So, and I think the way that we can do that is, one, include children's ideas and feelings on key dates within the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander calendar, so that children understand the value of rituals for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture as well as their own. And I probably won't say too much more, because I think there's further questions down the track that might cross over.
So, Sandra, what does reconciliation mean to you?
To me, it's all about strengthening our relationships between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and the non-Indigenous, for the good of all, to support equity and equality. I think that's, for me, that's the most important thing.
Yeah. How do you, or can you, explain reconciliation to young kids?
Well, I think the best way to do it is through books and conversations. And I think, there's a few good books, and I've just noted down Sorry Day is a great book for children. Finding Our Heart, the Uluru Statement, and Stories for Simon. And I think you find children are quite amazing when we allow their conversations to flow and allow honesty. And also the acknowledgement to country each morning, I think, is really important. And I think that acknowledgement of country that I've seen, it grows. And I really feel that acknowledgement of country grows that reconciliation for children, because once they understand the caring for country and caring for land and caring for people, they start caring for everything. And that's where we need to start.
What activities can you do in the classroom that demonstrates reconciliation?
Lots of provocations, using natural materials. When you're planning, you need to think about how can we embed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives. So a lot of people find it really difficult. I don't find it that difficult. Think about home corner. What's in our home corner? What is Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives? So can we have pictures of bush food? Can we have some recipes? Can we have some, if we're lucky enough to have some bark, that we can wrap food up to cook with. It's just about thinking what Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives can we have. We can even have some little coasters that have got some beautiful artwork on them. We can have a picture from a calendar, from an Aboriginal calendar, and put it in a frame and hang it up in home corner. Children are interested in transport. Okay, let's think about Aboriginal transport. And we've got planes, haven't we? Qantas planes that have got beautiful, Aboriginal work on them. So let's start thinking about how we can bring in the perspectives and contemporary perspectives in whatever it is that we've got.
Yeah. I like how you've been using the word contemporary a lot, because I think part of that is also reconciling the past with what's current at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so important, because in the past, Aboriginal people weren't white. Now we have a mix.
Yeah.
So, you know, blonde hair, blue eyes, white skin, you know, and people still these days will say that person's not Aboriginal.
Mm.
So contemporary is really, really important. Contemporary means things change.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the word contemporary is very important because things change and we don't want to be letting children think that Aboriginal people and where they live and what they do and where they go is the same as it was 100 years ago, because it's not.
Yeah. Thanks for that. A question for you, Sandra, is what would be your dream for reconciliation in the future?
No division. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are recognised for being the first people here, are consulted on our future of the land, Australia, and that we see a future of unity, equality and equity.
So, Sandra, where are some places that early childhood educators could go to start educating themselves on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives?
Cultural safety training. Again, I say the little red, yellow, black book. I did a TAFE course in 2015 called Aboriginal Cultural Education. So there are courses out there. Watch NITV to keep up to date with news and current affairs. I think that's really important. Subscribe to Reconciliation Australia and they will send you up-to-date newsletters. Go to websites such as VACA and SNAKE, indigenous.gov.au. There's also a website, Map of Indigenous Australia. So there's many things out there. Narragansett website. I think all of those, you'll learn lots.
Yeah. Where did you learn from?
All of those. And also webinars. I did a lot of webinars, a lot of reading, a lot of websites. As I said, I did an Aboriginal cultural education course in 2015. I talked to a lot of people. I talked to you, AJ. And yeah, you never stop learning.
Yeah. What would be two things that every educator should know about working with First Nations families?
Well, I think there's lots of things that we need to know, but I think the importance of family and connections with extended family, and maintaining the cultural identity of extended family, because I don't think everybody understands that. The second one would be protocols, welcoming, how they like to be addressed, language, because all Aboriginal people are in different places and spaces. So I think being open and honest and knowing the protocols that are applicable to that family, I think is really important.
So Sandra, what do you believe are some barriers that early childhood educators face when trying to incorporate First Nations perspectives into curriculum?
I think lack of confidence, being afraid that they're going to do something wrong, they're going to offend. I think that would probably be the biggest.
Yeah. Why do you think they might be offending people?
So I think they want to try so hard to do the right thing. And I think there's a lot of messages out there about don't do this and don't do that, and you can't do dot painting. And there's so many things out there that I think they're confused.
Yeah. So that's in terms of trying to embed it into the curriculum. What about any barriers that early childhood educators might have in teaching Aboriginal kids?
Well, again, I would think that they would be even more worried about doing the wrong thing. And that's where I think it goes back to the importance of family and connections and how to be addressed, and what do the family, what do they want, what's important to them, which is really no different to any other family. We want to know what's important for these families. But I think for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, we want their culture to be, we want their culture to be lived for that child. We want them to make connections with country and land and that sort of thing. So, and I guess for us, we don't always understand that connection. So I feel that it's very important to be able to connect with the family. And, it would be great if the family would feel comfortable enough to come in and spend time to show us what that connection feels like and looks like for that family. And I think it's building those relationships. And it's also your service. How welcoming is your service for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people? What message is your service giving, even from the outside to coming in? What message is it giving to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families? Because if they don't feel comfortable and welcome, then they're not really going to want to be around. Yeah. So I think it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah. What are some ways in which early childhood educators could start that journey in being able to link curriculum to make changes?
Well, I think they need to do an acknowledgement of country. Yeah. I think that's important. I think every day an acknowledgement of country needs to be made. ABC has an acknowledgement of country. So for any services that aren't doing an acknowledgement of country and don't know where to start with an acknowledgement of country, ABC has an acknowledgement of country, the play school, ABC, and that has educator notes on it. And those educator notes are brilliant. So if you're not sure, ABC Play School has quite a bit on acknowledgement of country there's a couple of videos on there with educator notes. So that's a really good, really good place to start. Obviously, your RAP, a reconciliation action plan, is a must, I think, for all early childhood services, because without a RAP, there's not a lot of authenticity to what you're doing. And I think that you really need to engage in a reconciliation action plan. And that's easy. You go on the Narragansett website and it seems daunting when you first go there. And I've been on quite a few reconciliation action plans now. But there's so much on Narragansett website. You've got great resources, you've got professional learning, curriculum resources, and it makes it really easy. There's also, if you go on FKA website, you've got Possum Skin Pedagogy, and that was written by Dr. Sue Atkinson. Fabulous resource. Honestly, if people don't know where to start, it's a great, and it's Victorian. Yeah. So I really recommend that. And as I said before, just thinking about in your environments and play spaces, just thinking about the perspectives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. What can we put in these environments and play spaces that reflect contemporary Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander? And if you think like that, it just gets easier and easier.
Hey, Sandra, what's been your journey about learning about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture and history?
Well, I probably have to say definitely not easy to begin with. And I guess in some respects it continues to not be easy, as not everybody shares the same perspective as me or my thinking. And this is why we have a gap, and this is why we're working towards reconciliation. This also highlights why it's important to develop positive attitudes with our children, and why we need to be embedding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives into our early childhood curriculum. For me, there was no truth telling at school. So once I started to feel I hadn't been given the truth and there had to be more to this, I had to work really hard to learn. And I had to look far and wide, and, you know, I spent a lot of time on the internet sourcing books and courses and cultural safety. I don't know how many cultural safety courses I've done, but I have to say just one cultural safety course probably doesn't cut it. And the beautiful thing about cultural safety courses is that every cultural safety course you do, each person has a story to tell, and their story is different, but it's so meaningful. And each story is told that is different just reinforces the sadness, the carnage, the trauma that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have suffered, and the intergenerational trauma that still continues today. And I'll never tire of cultural safety training because of those stories. And I think every time we do cultural safety training, it's a reminder.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be reminded. I don't think it's something that you do and you go, oh, but I've done cultural safety training.
But
and
that's, people say that all the time, don't you?
I know, and that's the end of it. But I've done that. I don't understand that. I don't think that we can hear enough stories about what has happened. I mean, I hear people say, I'll get over it. That was so long ago. Well, I'm sorry, but if that happened to you or that happened to your grandparents, would you be over it by now?
Do you have any First Nations idols that you look up to?
I have many, but am I going to name them? No, I'm not. And the reason I'm not going to name them is because I think every Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person needs to be acknowledged for their resilience and their determination. And for that, I'm not going to name any particular person.
That's cool. I like that honesty. What tips and strategies would you offer early childhood educators who may have no idea even where to start their journey?
I think Narragansett, the RAP, possum skin pedagogy, the little red, yellow, black book, and I think just not questioning what you're doing, just get in there and do something, because something is better than nothing.
Sandra, have you had any experience on working on reconciliation action plans?
I have had lots of experience working on, and I'm proud to say I've had lots of experience working on reconciliation action plans. I have started many within different services. And it's something that I really enjoy doing. The thing that you need to think about is making your journey authentic and understanding what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. But Narragansett is a great platform to work with. They're also great people to work with. You have any problems, you ring them, well, you can't ring them anymore, but you can chat online. They have a little chat box, and they've been extremely helpful. And, you know, there are there's professional learning on there, there's curriculum resources. There's no reason for anybody not to know how to meet your actions and deliverables. There's something there for everything. And that sort of helps you with your journey as well, in terms of knowing how to support the children in the curriculum as well. Also, the professional learning for the educators. And I just think it's such a wonderful journey to embark on. For me, I've just felt quite fulfilled and feel as if I'm contributing to a reconciliation journey or path that is so important, because Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people were here before the white people came. Yeah. And it's time that we acknowledge that. It's time that we do something about that. And it's time that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people feel valued.
Yeah. What are some easy things about doing a RAP, and some of the hard things about doing a RAP that you've experienced?
Look, I think the easy things are the things that you can do, that you can achieve. The harder things are probably is touching base with elders, because there is a section in it where there's an expectation that you're going to contact elders. That's probably the hardest. And if you understand the community of Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islanders, elders are strained. They're hard to get hold of, and they're getting older. And there's a lot of pressure placed upon them. The other thing is that we don't think about developing relationships. We just bang, make a phone call. I need you. When are you available? People don't understand that we need to develop a trusting relationship. You know, not every Aboriginal person is going to trust the white man, understandably so. So there are some aspects that are challenging. And, you know, I guess when I first started in my journey, it was, where do I go to build these relationships? And I think even talking to people now, that's probably their biggest challenge, is we understand we have to build the relationships, but we're not quite sure where to go.
Yeah.
And I've been lucky because, well, I know you, AJ. But, you know, I've met a few Aboriginal people along the way and developed lovely relationships with them, and they've been really supportive and helpful. But then there's other people, they don't know where to go. But I think the other thing too is, for a long time, people didn't want to pay money to consultants to support them and help them in the journey.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably been a challenge, is that they wanted these services and they wanted these supports for nothing.
Yeah.
So I think one of the biggest things for early childhood is to understand that you can't just reach out and get these supports and networks happening, that, you know, you have to find consultants and things to help you and support you, and that's okay. And it doesn't always have to be an elder.
I've got a final question for you now, and that is, what would you want educators to walk away from our discussion here tonight?
I would hope that they would walk away going, oh, gee, lots of resources, lots of ideas. We're inspired now. And we can't wait to get back to work with all these ideas. We've written all these notes and places to go to. Yeah, we know what to do and where to go now.
Yeah.
Because it's a wonderful journey and I love it.
Look, Sandra, I want to thank you for joining us tonight, and it's been a pleasure in working with you, but also talking with you tonight. So thank you.
Thanks, AJ. Always a pleasure.
Thanks.